In my experience, Palm Sunday is usually a rather noisy affair, as we sing our lively hymns to welcome Jesus into Jerusalem. Our hosannas ring out, and it is a day of celebration. But as we hear Mark's version of the Palm Sunday story just now, I want us to notice in particular, if you focus on Jesus, how silent Jesus is when he's actually on that road. Notice the silence of Jesus and reflect on what that might mean as we try to interpret the story for ourselves today. And so it's Mark chapter 11, verses 1 to 11. When they were approaching Jerusalem at Bethphage and Bethany, near the Mount of Olives, Jesus sent 2 of his disciples and said to them, "Go into the village ahead of you, and immediately as you enter it, you will find tied there a colt that has never been ridden. Untie it and bring it. If anyone says to you, 'Why are you doing this?' just say this: 'The Lord needs it and will send it back here immediately.'" They went away and found the colt tied near a door outside in the street. As they were untying it, some of the bystanders said to them, "What are you doing, untying the colt?" They told them what Jesus had said, and they allowed them to take it. Then they brought the colt to Jesus and threw their cloaks on it, and he sat on it. Many people spread their cloaks on the road, and others spread leafy branches that they had cut in the fields. Then those who went ahead and those who followed were shouting, "Hosanna! Blessed is the one who comes in the name of the Lord. Blessed is the coming kingdom of our ancestor David. Hosanna in the highest heaven." Then he entered Jerusalem and went into the temple. And when he had looked around at everything, as it was already late, he went out to Bethany with the 12. Did you notice the silence of Jesus? First of all, of course, because Jesus sets the script for this event ahead of time and allows the disciples to do all the speaking. So once the colt is there and the ride in Jerusalem begins, Jesus has nothing more that he needs to say. And then as Jesus actually enters Jerusalem, and it's clear to everyone around that there's something significant going on, it's left to the crowds to do the biblical exegesis, to make links to the Old Testament scriptures, and we're hearing from the Psalms as they call out. And then finally, of course, and this is unique to Mark, when Jesus arrives in Jerusalem and goes into the temple, although he will have something very significant, of course, to say, very angry words about the temple, for this day, for the moment, Jesus stays silent and he just withdraws to Bethany. 3 possible points of significance, maybe, for that observation of the silence of Jesus. And I don't think you need to choose between them, and maybe there's something of increasing depth as we go through these 3. Maybe the first thing we can read into Jesus' silence is that Jesus is passing over responsibility for the conversations in this story to his disciples, who, of course, within a very short space of time, must become the voice of the gospel in the world after Jesus' crucifixion, resurrection, and ascension? Is there something of this, of Jesus preparing his disciples to be the ones who do need to be the voice of the gospel? Secondly, Jesus is allowing himself to be done to by the crowds. There's not just a sense of humility here, and in my experience when we talk about Palm Sunday, we always talk about it being about the humility of Jesus riding a donkey into Jerusalem, but I think it's more than that. It's Jesus making himself utterly vulnerable to the crowds and to the tide of public opinion, and very deliberately and consciously putting himself in the hands of the crowds, and so they are the ones who speak. This is not just about Jesus saying, well, I'm a king, but I'm not going to throw my weight around. I'm going to be kind and gentle. No, this is Jesus being an utterly paradoxical kind of king who is helpless in the midst of the crowd. And I think then the third element to this, and this maybe links in with that theme of silence that goes right through Mark's gospel that we sometimes call the messianic secret. Why is it that the identity of Jesus and the significance of Jesus cannot be spoken out? Well, it cannot be spoken out until Jesus has finally been to the cross and been raised. There are no words that can explain the significance of the cross. The disciples will only fully understand it when Jesus has made that journey to the fullest, and then they also respond to that call to take up their own cross. There's always something about the gospel of the cross that is more than words, that cannot be put into words, and indeed the Christian tradition has always struggled to put into words what the cross means. But it must be followed through in Christian discipleship and Christian living. It's always going to be beyond words. So in terms of the significance for us, if we hear, excuse the irony, the silence of Jesus in this story, first of all, that of course there is a role for us as Christians and us as the church to make sure that we make the space in which others can speak. In recent times, I've been involved in a lot of conversations on the general theme of privilege, white privilege, male privilege, the privilege of power, and how we in the church often struggle to realise the privileged position that we are in. And part of recognising that privilege is realising the responsibility that falls profoundly on us to make sure that other voices are not only heard, but actually can take a lead. So is there a calling here to think when we might actually need to be silent in order that others can speak? Secondly, in terms of that theme of Jesus becoming utterly vulnerable in the journey to the cross, not just a bit humble, not just not quite the king that people thought him, but utterly vulnerable. Of course, our calling as Christians and as the church is to recognise the God who does come alongside the vulnerable in Jesus, and all that means for the priorities for our own mission. And then thirdly, that sense of being people who proclaim the cross of Christ. And yes, we will use words, we will use hymns in all kinds of ways, and we will and we must. But we will have not plumbed the meaning of the cross until we live it and die it, because that's the calling of Jesus. Our Christian faith must always go beyond words and must always show itself in that commitment to walk the road with Jesus.